Challenge for the ladies. So
the lights could go out any moment, guy. The way the weather has just like changed outside, it could go out any moment. So I'm just giving you a heads up. So let's just go on.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is Bites Unlocked, and today we have myself and Waz in the video. Yes, it's been long since you saw both of us. So today we are here to break down what's just happened, the Galaxy Unpacked event. And this is basically an event to hold the Samsung Galaxy A series lineup, the A52, A32, and the A72 specifically.
There were a lot of upgrades in the phone, and they basically talk about the A52, A72, nothing more, nothing less. Some of the features of the phones were kind of, were surprising and alarming to me, because I was like, really, I kind of expected more than that, but I got less than what I actually expected. So it's not really much of a big deal, but then I think there were some upgrades. Okay, there were some upgrades, but I really see the amount of upgrade I was actually expecting. So cool event, similar to the Galaxy S21 event, Unpacked event. So similar thing, nothing much about the event, but at least we'll talk about the ups and downs as we go on through the video. So yeah.
Okay, so starting off, let's hit on the divisions or the partitions we have. Okay. So we're going to start with the build quality for both devices, because we don't really want to make this video very long. So we're going to make sure we handle both devices together. So we'll start with the build quality for both devices. Honestly, to me, the build is okay. Thinner bezels, similar looks like the A51 and the A71 previously. Well, let me just leave the rest to you. What do you also think about the build?
Actually, the design there's not much to the design, because I actually, I've seen a lot of people actually feeling the design like, oh, this design is fire, it's sick, it's dope.
Obviously,
and I'm like, there's nothing special about this, because actually everything is normal to me. It's normal to me, like the design of the camera setup and everything. Although we are getting, from the specs we have here, we're kind of getting a lot more bezels than last year compared to last year's A51, A71 series, So we're kind of getting a lot more bezels. But then it's not significant. You're still getting a big screen, smaller bezels, still in the 81% range ratio built to body to display screen ratio. So
screen to body ratio.
Yeah, it's still a nice thing. Nothing special about it though. There's nothing special about this display.
Initially, my upset was the fact that they weren't really specific about both devices. They were kind of summarizing everything together.
Talking interchangeably between the A52 and the A72.
Yes, they were just switching things up. I don't know if it's because it was just a budget device. That was why they turned out to, not really waste so much time about it. But anyways, it has been dealt with.
Yeah. So
okay, so that's it about the build and then the design. Yeah. Now the display. Let's hit on the display. So the A52 is going to come out with just a regular A52 4G with a Super AMOLED display, 90 Hz, 800 nits, 6.5 inches, and 1080p panel with Corning's Gorilla Glass 5, whereas the A52 5G will come in with a Super AMOLED display, 120 Hz, and then the A72 is going to come in with a Super AMOLED display, 90 Hz, 6.7 inches, and kind of the only difference here now is probably the refresh rate and the display sizes. Because the 5G variant for the A52 is going to come in with a 120 Hz refresh rate, still Super AMOLED, same 1080p across all three devices. But I don't understand why the A72 is supposed to be an upgrade, but has lesser specifications. I mean, lower specifications than its predecessor.
You see, that's my problem. That's my problem. Because we're expecting that the higher you go, right, the A72 is going to be better than the A52, with more features, much better features compared to the A52. We would expect the same to happen between the A52 and A32, A30, A31, and also the same thing as you go down. So as you climb higher, you get more features, much better features. But then we're trying to see a 10. Samsung is kind of taking a U10 over here where we see the A52 5G kind of getting a much better display or faster display compared to the A72, which is unexpected. Actually, that's one of the surprising things I noticed with the event, because I was expecting.
I love Samsung. We both know that we do love Samsung because you use a Samsung, and I've used a Samsung before. Mm-hmm. But looking at where they're coming from, what they're coming out with this, I believe that they were trying to cut some points to not affect the price drastically, or should I say dramatically. Well, that to me is probably one basic reason why I think they would want to have it that way, like to cut down the specs of a higher end version to make the lower end version more better than it. Or the 5G tag itself is probably maybe has an effect on it.
Yeah. And that is another issue, because I was surprised. Like, what does the 5G doesn't actually mean anything except, it has just its reference to network speed. That is all. That's all the 5G stands for. Right? The 5G doesn't actually mean much better processor. It doesn't mean better display or faster refresh rates. It doesn't mean a bigger battery. You understand? So the 5G is actually just allocated to the network speed. Like, everybody hears 5G, 4G, they know what that stands for. You understand? But now we're seeing a 5G phone, but then we're getting a much better or faster refresh rate compared to one which isn't 5G, but then we expected that it's supposed to be much better than that. You understand? So I don't know what Samsung is actually doing here, and I think
the funny thing is, even with the 5G, I think their basic their main target is for Africa, if I'm correct. Africa and India, if I'm correct. But how many African countries even have 5G? If you're taking a critical look at it, if you are sitting down to analyze it, there are not much African countries that have 5G. And even if they are trying to make the 5G more popular in our regions here, there are not much African countries that have 5G. So I personally believe that even if it doesn't really set up with me.
Of course. I mean, it's cool. The display is really good. A bigger display for the A72, 6.5 inches for both A52 versions. But then, I mean, the 120 Hz we are getting on the A52, 5G, it's kind of boggling my mind. It's not sitting well with me at all. But they've done it already, so I mean, we can't say much about that.
It's just refresh rates. I mean, you basically wouldn't notice the difference between 120 Hz
of course,
and 90 Hz.
A lot of people wouldn't actually notice the difference between 90 and then 120. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not that significant, but then it's a feature, so I think we just have to talk about it and let it lie like that. So, Charlie?
Yeah. Moving on, let's hit on the performance. Now, on performance, we have 3 categories where we would have the platform, which includes the processor and then the memory. Now, let's start off with the performance in general. Let's start with the platform. Now, it's coming out of the box with Android 11, One UI 3.1. I made mention of this in my video. All 3 devices. We have Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G for the regular A52, and then we have the 750G for the 5G, just because the 750G is compatible with 5G. And then we go back to the 720G for the Snapdragon, for the A72, which still baffles me. Like, it's mind-boggling because, I mean, it's A72 and it's basically equivalent to the A52 regular. I mean, if you are taking a critical look at the specs I'm looking at on the screen right now, there's no significant difference between the A52 and the A72 when it comes to platform and performance.
Of course. There's no actual, because you're and it's funny looking at the specs like this on paper, because we're getting the same processor for A52 and then the A72, but then, like we're talking about, 5G doesn't actually mean you get a better processor, but then we're seeing something here. So it's kind of making people think that with 5G, they're kind of getting a bigger battery, much better display, a much better processor, but it's not supposed to be so. I mean, there are certain processors that actually can handle 5G, and there are some processors that actually have built-in, 5G capabilities. But then that doesn't actually mean you should have a much better processor in the Galaxy A52 than the Galaxy A72. Because I mean, the fact that it's not 5G doesn't mean it should have a better processor.
Let's hit more on the other important parts. With the memory, it's obvious. It's going to come with 128 gigs, 4 gig of RAM, 128 gigs, 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs, 6 gigs of RAM, and then 256 gigs, 8 gig of RAM. It cuts across for all the devices, so it depends on which variant you want to go for. You are free to get in. Although we would recommend that you get the 128 and 8 gigs of RAM. That is if they would have that variant here in our side of the world. But anywhere you're watching this from, that would be a very good preference, because one, it will cut costs down, and two, you get all you need performance. I mean, 128 gigs is huge. You know, I use a 128 gig in my device and I'm cool with it. I mean, some people would want more, so yes, if you can afford the 256 gigabytes variant, that's cool. So let's hit more on your favorite part, the main camera. I mean, the camera specifications are almost the same for almost every device. With the exception of the A72, which has optical image stabilization, OIS, and a digital zoom of up to 30 times and 30 times optical zoom. What is your take on this specific parts about the device? I mean, they all do have OIS, unfortunately. Fortunately, they all have OIS. Fortunately, they all have OIS. So, what do you think about these cameras? I mean, their theme for the whole A series is awesome. So they begin with awesome cameras.
So starting with last year, all right, from last year's A51 series, we had 48 megapixels on, you know, the A51 5G, 48 megapixels cameras for the main lens, and then we have a 12 megapixel wide, 5 megapixel macro, and 5 megapixel depth, right? But now this year we're having pretty much the same thing: 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and depth. But then the main cameras kind of differs. We have 64 instead of the 48 we had last year. So that's a significant improvement, you know, getting more megapixels. But then, like we always say on this channel, Bytes on Log, more megapixels doesn't actually equate to better qualities in cameras. So although you're getting a 64 megapixel camera, you should just take note that if the phone doesn't actually has its software, and then the camera build setups and everything, the hardware, software doesn't actually sync, and you know there's no that much efficiency, I don't going to get a very good camera. Apple is sticking to 12 megapixel main cameras, and they're still doing very good.
They're doing very exceptional. They are doing very exceptional.
Of course,
I'm not going to lie. I love the cameras on iOS.
So but then coming to the A52 5G and then the A72, which is kind of like the start of the show. So we're seeing a difference here. A72 5G has one more camera which has been taken out, has one camera which has been taken out from the A52 5G and replaced with another one. So for the A72, we do not have a depth sensor, right? We don't have a 5 megapixel depth sensor, although we do have it replaced with an 8 megapixel telephoto lens. I don't know. I mean, on paper, they're actually saying telephoto, but then in real life use, you might not see it to be a telephoto lens because, you know, I mean, for the S21 series, like I tested the S21 Plus, on paper they actually made mention of the telephoto lens, but then I took the phone, make a couple of, you know, tests and comparisons with last year's and stuff. I realized it's not actually really a telephoto lens. It's just a zoom lens that, you know, basically does kind of what a telephoto is supposed to be doing. So in this scenario, we're having what they say to be a telephoto lens, 8 megapixel of 3 times optical zoom. And I think all of them do have 10 times digital zoom. Yeah, all three phones, A52, A52 5G, and A72, all have 10 times digital zoom, but the A72 has a specific zoom lens for 3 times optical zoom of 8 megapixels. So that's really good. It's 8 megapixels. I mean, the more megapixels in a telephoto lens, the more quality you're going to get. But then, I mean, you can't really do that in a phone as you know, as cheap as this and a middle range. Right.
So most of it is based on optimization. If the processor is capable of handling the image processing, I mean, we are good to go. But if the processor is not capable of handling it, so and that's a bummer. So the battery capacity is 4,500 for both A52 devices, and then the 5,000 milliamp hour for the A72, which is going to be charging at 25 watt speed.
So 4,500 milliamp hour batteries on both A52 versions, with the A72 coming with 5,000 milliamp hour battery. So I think that is another improvement we are seeing. Something which is it's supposed to be normal to see a much better improvement of feature in the A72 than the A52 5G. It's not supposed to be a surprise, right? But then Samsung is making it to be like a surprise. You understand? But then it's normal to see, the A72 getting much more bigger battery than the A52 series, both of them. But then they all come with the same fast charge, 25 watts. And I think last year's series, the A51 series, also comes with, they both come with 4,500 milliamp hour batteries as well, but then with 15 watt fast charge. So you're getting the same battery size, but then with a faster charging speed. So you could use it for the same amount of time that you could use the A51 series, but then to charge it's going to be much faster. Like Samsung is advertising 50% charge in 30 minutes. So from 0 to 50 in 30 minutes. That's actually really fast. So in an hour you should get about almost a full charge. That's kind of good. But then with the Galaxy A72, you have a much bigger battery with the same fast charging, 25 watts. So then now you're not only getting a much bigger battery, so a much longer lifetime battery life, but then you're also getting a faster charge. So you should expect that the 4,500 milliamp hour batteries in the A52 are going to charge much faster than the A72 because the A72 has a much bigger battery, so you're going to take a little more time to charge it up very quickly. So I should expect, although they didn't really state, but then I should expect a 50% charge in about 45 minutes. That will be kind of like the average you should get. So in an hour and a half or something, you should get a full battery with the A72. So yeah, it's very good, really good improvement there.
The price for the A52, you're going to get it here in Ghana for 1,899. I think 1,899. And then the A72 is going to be 2,399. 2,499.
2,499, yeah.
Yeah, almost 2,500 cedis.
Yeah.
So yeah, that sums it up for everything. If you intend to get any of these devices, I and Waz's recommendation is that you probably get the A52 and with the higher storage variant and the higher RAM variant. Hopefully the 256 or the 128 and the 8 gigs or 6 gigs. That could sustain you for a longer period to think of even getting a different smartphone. Now, this was quite a long version. I didn't expect it to be this long.
Of course.
But hopefully you'd get to see more of our faces if this video could get, at least 50 likes or more. We'll see if we can do a segment of this and more on the channel. Once again, I'm Delpy and
Waz.
Yeah, so we hope to see you guys in our subsequent videos. Don't forget to subscribe and stay active as always. Peace out.
Stay safe.
What did they do? What did they do?
Hey, good as the light will go off. I swear.
Yeah, we finished. If I stop the phone, so say you go see say they run or you stop.